Still stuck, though, around 6,500, and now implied volatility for Bitcoin dropping to the lowest levels of the year. Jim, you were predicting a breakout before, but now you're getting a little bit more bearish on it. I kind of feel like it's just been stuck apart from these tiny, tiny little moves. What's changed in your view, and how do you want to trade Bitcoin today?
By far the biggest thing that's changed is how muted these moves have been. The last 2 weeks in a row, we've talked about Bitcoin breaking out of a range and moving to the upside. Both times it's done it, and it's done it aggressively, and both times the move has fallen short and then come back to where it started with no real loss, but no real gain either. That to me is amazing. When we launched the futures contract, we knew that it was probably going to take away some of the volatility because it just creates a better arena for price discovery, but I didn't know that would happen so quickly. So I now think if you're trading Bitcoin, I think it's more prudent to have tighter targets and tighter stops because guess what? It moves in shorter range.
Okay, so what's the trade?
So right now it was trading about 6,500 last I looked at it. 6,450 on the downside. This is the October contract still. Again, we talk about this stop-in thing. I want to see a little bit of weakness before I think it's a spot to sell it. 6,450 with a stop-in short with a target of 6,100 on the downside. Remember, the 6,000 level is magical for some reason. There seems to be a lot of support there. That's why I don't want to make any sort of prediction that it's going below that. 6,100 is a target there, but if it trades back above 6,650, I think it's a spot to wipe yourself out.
It's a magical support until one day it's not. Brian, what do you think?
Amen, of course.
Well, as I mentioned before, I'm giving this a bucket, so I kind of disagree with Uriel to some degree. I do think there will be one more push down to that 6,000 level, so that's 6,100. So maybe this trade makes sense at this point. And Uriel mentioned the volatility here in Bitcoin. When you take a look at the volatility, I mean the up and down movement of the price of Bitcoin, we've really seen it come down. Last year, a year ago, that thing was trading twice as fast, up and down as it is now. And when you look back to 2016, the level of volatility was actually normalized near that of an investment in the equities market. I think if we continue to get that subsiding in volatility down towards what it's like to trade an equity position, then I think that's what people got behind in 2016 behind Bitcoin. I think we need to see that. We're on the right path. We're seeing the volatility come down. That's why Uriel's moved his stops and his targets in a little bit. If that continues to subside, I think people will get behind Bitcoin, and I think you'll see it rally just like it did 2 years ago.
And Matt, to the crypto crazies out there on Twitter, you guys give it your worst. I love the engagement. There's one thing I would mention, though, is many times you guys don't understand the concept of a stop-in, and that's fine. I'll explain it on Twitter as often as you'd like. But keep in mind that to me, it's a trading vehicle. When those people on Twitter come at me from all sides, showing that the great emotion they have in this, someone who's been trading for 32 years, I think Brian would agree, would say, you guys might be a little too tied into this to view it unobjectively. So that's my thoughts on that. But come at me. I have no problem with it.
Well,
that's what happens when you have
Go ahead.
Yeah, when you have huge levels of volatility like we saw last year, people get so emotional about it. You know, they can't handle the 4 or 5% swings in a day. I can't even handle that, right?
Amen.
So I think when you see that volatility come down, that's when people will get behind it as an actual currency or maybe some other bucket like we talked about that people can be investable in. Until then, you know, you'll hear the back and forth rhetoric that goes on Twitter or whatnot and people giving their huge opinions on this because the stomach for it is great right now. But that is starting to subside, and I think we're going to see that change.
Jim, really quick before we have to go, do you think as we're sort of approaching the year anniversary of the launch of the futures contract now, you know, we are getting to this normalized point and you're not going to see these fluctuations, that Bitcoin might be safer?
Right. I think it's a new world. I think Bitcoin is a safer place to be, which is different than being a safe place to be, by the way, but it's safer than it was before. This is a market that went from 20,000 down to 6,000 relatively quickly. So it's still the Wild West out there, but it's clearly safer than it was, in my opinion.